how, I mentioned narcissism, and I didn't want to leave everyone with that idea, because I think we should also acknowledge that someone who is very low in cholesterol is not producing oxytocin. I've done a video on this and I'll link that, but yeah, if she doesn't have enough oxytocin, she may not be able to, connect with her motherly instinct in the way that she needs to.
And the largest area of active research on oxytocin's function is within the realm of neuropsychiatry. And it turns out that oxytocin, it probably plays a role in a variety of different normal behaviors, and some of which in the lay literature has been described as sort of the hormone of love, the hormone of trust. It certainly seems that it plays a critical role in those aspects of interpersonal relationships, specifically anorexic patients who have restrictive eating habits, and when their disease is not being adequately treated, have low weight. There's evidence that there is lower levels of oxytocin, especially within the CSF, and that they may have a blunted or reduced oxytocin response. But there's a lot that's being investigated in that realm.
Hi everyone, Jane here. This video's been kind of a long time coming for me, but I've been pondering the whole veganism issue. And Hot for Health is the very first video clip of in regard to Agana America and how her children, especially her baby, is very malnourished. It's quite tragic and sad. Uh, but I have had things in common with vegans. I started this channel because I had a lot in common with fibromyalgia, and I could substantiate that quite a bit easier through the medical studies. But why do I have so much in common with vegans? The whole malnourishment issue. Just a lot in common all the way down to the mundane. They call it brain fog. Well, to be more specific, it's word searching. And I am still doing a lot of that. You'll have to forgive me for that issue. Connecting your thoughts, getting from A to D, but where's B and C along the way? Um, I think memory issues can cause some of the OCD symptoms in veganism, and moods that are unpredictable, becoming overly angry or overly sad over things, the depression and all that. There's other things in common like pain in the muscles and bone and connective tissue. The muscles look very damaged in vegans. I mean, they're wasting. Um, Aga's baby will come into the picture here in a minute, and um, he's wasting. It's really tragic. Fat distribution, that there's so much wasting in uh, veganism, but they'll have a round tummy, maybe low body fat, but it is an issue. I've had abnormal labs in common with vegans, which I'll get into a little more, like low vitamin B12 and folate, dyslipidemia. The lipids become um, off norms. Vitamin D deficiency, I think glucose dysregulation could play a role, and many vegans become iron deficient. Well, as for me, when I'm feeling worse, and this started, well, a little background. I had an adrenalectomy in 2013 for Cushing's syndrome, and this caused not iron deficiency, but overly high red blood cells and hematocrit, stuff like that. And it's antidotal, of course, but I think it's the body's mechanism to try to fight back. Um, And very briefly after I had Cushing's, I turned up as hypopituitary, and I do receive growth hormone treatment. And I'm gonna self-appoint myself as the poster child for endocrine problems. And Aga, you've made yourself the poster child for if it can go wrong, what can go wrong with veganism. You're very emaciated, and even other more mundane things in common with vegans is sinus problems, canker sores or cold sores, fingernail problems, hair problems, and skin thinning or acne, and very visibly the whole sunken eye and at the temple area is becomes wasted. It's a lot of aging going on where the fat deposits disappear. This happened for me with Cushing's. I mean, I broke the mold. You're not supposed to be wasting with Cushing's, but I lost a lot of muscle. And if there's going to be a takeaway message for any of this, is that you could do irreparable damage to your endocrine system. These illnesses did that to me, where the whole protein synthesis is not up to snuff. I have a great deal of difficulty building muscle. It's made me very prone to diabetes. I mean, and the takeaway on all of this is that the hormones work as a team. Cortisol, your adrenal hormone, affects the thyroid. The pituitary hormones, like growth hormone, will affect just about every way you metabolize things. Growth hormone, cortisol, and thyroid, nothing happens in your macronutrients without adequate and normal supply of all three of these hormones. And of course, there's more to it than that. But the point being is that you don't want to mess these things up if you can help it. Truly. Very quickly, the oxytocin and metabolism is, and this is from the source. These are from science studies. Eating behavior plays a very big role. Body weight and fat, glucose, hemostasis. And that's a normal regulatory, your body's regulating these things. And that's where the hormones come in. Eating disorders can affect this. And of course, all of this is a bit anecdotal because Aga and nobody is going to have their cerebral spinal fluid checked for oxytocin. It's just not going to happen in the real world. This happens in studies. But okay, eating disorders can affect the oxytocin. Good job, Hot for Health. And then they're looking into it further. And I'm going to say, well, on this slide, there's a lot of, what do they call it? Psychosocial, love, social cognition, attachment. And if it gets whacked out, depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, ADHD, and I would add OCD to the list. As an aside, I'm going to also suggest there's appetite hormones that are involved. I mean, vegans have this insatiable appetite, and because of the malnourishment, but also on the hormone issue, is that they're looking at people with, I believe it's a genetic disease called Prader-Willi syndrome. And one of the symptoms is just this insatiable appetite. They have low pituitary function, low oxytocin, and these are the type of children that the parents have to lock the cupboards and refrigerator because these children cannot be satisfied and they get extremely obese. Another part that really inspired me to dig a little deeper, finally, I've been pondering it, and some of it seems very anecdotal to me, like, oh, people that are vegan have thyroid problems because they're eating goitrogenic foods. Well, it could play a role in it, but I think it runs deeper than that. Um, or oxalate rich foods, can cause kidney stones. Well, if your metabolism's messed up on its own right, for example, with Cushing's, you're more prone to kidney stones. So it isn't just high oxalate foods. Um, and I developed all these issues without being a vegan or, actually with Cushing's, when I gained the weight, I ate like a monk, compared to the American standard diet. I mean, typically I ate brown rice, a moderate amount of vegetables, and high protein. I mean, I became very protein starved and really craved animal fat, and I allowed myself that. So there's more going on. Um, Hot for Health mentions cholesterol. I want to get into that a little bit too. But really, what was a great inspiration, besides the oxytocin link, oxytocin is hypothalamus hormone that's stored in your posterior pituitary gland, and that's also where you make the antidiuretic hormone that regulates the fluids in your body. Um, the anterior would be all your, just about every other hormone, like growth hormone, the ACTH that signals your uh, adrenals to make cortisol and fight or flight hormones, for example, or it signals your thyroid. Okay, I'm transgressing a bit, but this was really an inspiration for me to move forward with this video. Um, and Aga, please feed your children. This is so sad to see how your own child is deteriorating. And this exchange really inspired me to move forward with this video. And Rehab says, I wonder if Owen has Cushing syndrome. Owen's the baby. And Hot for Health stated, strange you said that. I've been talking to a woman who has had that, and this made me think about her cholesterol connection. And yes, I think there is a huge cholesterol connection, and I'll get more into that in a moment. And then Vegan Rehab said, Hot for Health, I'm speculating. Yes, all of this is speculation. Are there studies out there? Who knows, but there's, the point being, you do not want to intentionally or unintentionally disrupt your hormones. This is what keeps vitality going. And then Hot for Health says, I think he has far worse to worry about being the outcome. And I am in a, when I read that about the Cushing's, I thought, oh, he's way too young. But nobody knows their hormones till they're tested, okay? And this infant, this small child, it does have symptoms visibly of Cushing's. So, good eye, Vegan Rehab. For example, he has the puffed up cheeks and kind of the wasting limbs, the very thin arms and legs. And I'm going to play this clip a couple times over. And I want you to observe one thing, and this is another symptom of Cushing's, is that it wastes the whole pelvic girdle structure. All the musculature disappears. You can develop back problems and hip flexor muscles, and how your whole pelvis and hips are held in place. And the hip flexors, that would be the muscles you use on a set of stairs or getting up and down out of a chair. They're major muscle groups. And what I want you to take note is to see how this infant's legs are rolling out a little bit, because that it's visible that that structure is not holding him together properly. So good eye, Vegan Rehab. Okay, we'll move along.
Still has time to grow and develop normally. She could catch this early enough. You know what I mean? Like, he could be okay. He could grow. His brain could still grow. His body could still develop.
Triglycerides, you want them less than 150. I've got 160. Again, not an issue.
They're really pretty good. Your iron store is at 7, above 5 is normal. That's on the lower end of normal. That's good.
Hi everyone, I want to share the results of my vegan blood test with you. This is a test taken at about 9 months after being a vegan, following a high carb, low fat vegan diet. And the very first part of the test, you'll see there's some areas that are called out of range. These are elevated areas. The MCV, MCH are slightly elevated. The triglyceride level is actually elevated quite high. Definitely an area of concern that my doctor brought up with me.
That was a clip from Vegan Rehab's one of his videos, and I keep forgetting to say I'll link everything in the description, all the video clips. I want to look a little closer at what was going on with this one person here. He had been a vegan for 9 months, and the thyroid function looks pretty good, although the free T4 looks a little on the low side, and I really am not 100% certain how to interpret that, other than T4 converts to T3 in order to be utilized. So I don't know if his thyroid is being affected or not. But he did have some things out of range, triglycerides being one of them. And this is my working theory, that possibly the lack of animal fats contribute to the dysregulation of the lipids. But for the moment, this MCV and MCH are both high. Now, what does that mean? And this is for the first one, MCV. When it's high, could be indicative of a vitamin B12 deficiency, a deficiency in folic acid, liver disease, and hypothyroidism. So, of course, it's all theoretical, but when these things are not adequate in your body, could cause this dysregulation of your hormones, and you could get in serious trouble, I would say, even from just the dietary factor. Okay, what's the role of cholesterol? Your brain, cell membranes, GI tract, structural foundation for vital hormones, including vitamin D, sex hormone, and cortisol. It's hugely important. In LDL and HDL, you want those in proper proportions in your body, and and cholesterol combats inflammation. Um, and I think Hot for Health, Donna, is really spot on that cholesterol intake plays an important role. And listen up, vegans. You could pause this at any time and read every word. But these cholesterol helps heal injury in your body, and another function is it removes toxins. So if you're going to be all bent out of shape about detoxing, increase your animal fat. This is what carries it out of your body. It's one of the functions. There is so much to be said about hormones. But I'll start with cortisol. And back to the baby who, it was speculated could have Cushing's. Well, I'm going to add a speculation to it that the hormones might be really messed up, and even to the point of low cortisol, low thyroid, low growth hormone. Nobody knows unless you get tested. That's the point. Okay, cortisol is a pleiotropic hormone. It means it needs to be just right in the body to function properly. Increase or decrease muscle mass. Same with bone and connective tissue. Facilitate maturation of a fetus. Brain function. I mean, it's all over the map, the importance of a proper level of cortisol. And I just want to comment very briefly, and of course, pause the video at any time to read through all the details. But when I had high cortisol from Cushing's, it dysregulated my lipids, for example. And I will speculate it was the body trying to fight back to repair the damage. That's my speculation. I can't prove it. I'm not sure if anybody can. But it dysregulated my vitamin D, dropped considerably. And the whole point of what I'm getting at is that there's an interaction between the hormones. One can affect another to another to another. They work as a team. Oftentimes, Cushing's patients, they will become hypothyroid. Their thyroid will not function properly. And that's an example of how one hormone can affect another. It's just so important to have proper levels of hormone. And pause it here if you like, but the growth hormone axis has everything to do with your body processing the macros. It breaks down fat. It helps uptake glucose into the muscles. It helps to synthesize protein. And it's all on a feedback loop. And IGF-1, I've mentioned that in other videos, is just imperative. It's downstream from growth hormone. And you could see the interplay with other hormones like an increased ghrelin or a reduced ghrelin. That has to do with your appetite. So growth hormone, you don't want to mess with it if at all humanly possible. And very briefly, the thyroid hormones promote normal brain development. It affects your heart, muscle, bone, gut, adipose tissue. That would be your fat stores. Lipoprotein, with the LDL receptors. I'm not even going to pretend I'm going to go all into it, but it increases the metabolic rate. It helps your reproductive system. and the maturation of the fetal lungs. I mean, and again, I cannot stress enough that all these hormones are interactive, and you really don't want to mess with them in a harmful way through diet. And that is the takeaway message on this video. Okay, have a great day, everybody.
She's low in, functioning hormones to be able to have her motherly instinct and connect and be willing to do anything in the world that it takes to save her baby. So all she has to do is feed him. That's all she has to do. And this can all be, he can get better. He still has time to grow and develop normally. She could catch this early enough. You know what I mean? Like, he could be okay. He could grow. His brain could still grow. His body could still develop. He could still learn to walk and talk. This is preventable. All she has to do is change his diet. That's all.